Yep. Everybody here knows that students have more and more assignments, and more of those assignments are being done on a computer. But as that happens, instructors have less and less insight into how their students actually complete those assignments, the steps and the missteps that they take. I'd like to show you how Envigilator solves that problem for my co-founder, Professor Kyle Lutz, and many more teachers like him. So Kyle teaches introductory programming classes at Purdue. And if he's, say, giving a final exam, a coding exam in the lab, here's how he would use Envigilator. When all of his students show up in the lab, then he directs them to the Envigilator.com homepage, and they click to download a small executable and run it. When it pops up, they type in their first name, their last name, and Kyle's ID number, and then the event pops up. Events could be exams like this, or they could be homework assignments. They log in, and the Envigilator watermark just goes down in the corner, and then they go about doing their exam just like they would normally. So in Kyle's class, that means they pull up Visual Studio, they write some code, maybe they look up a few things online, and they go about doing their exam however it is that they do it. This could be, again, writing essays. It could be creating graphics in Photoshop, doing 3D modeling. So James is doing his exam. He's writing some code. And Envigilator is, all that time, it's taking screenshots and collecting data about how he's interacting with the computer, what program he's using, and how long he's in each of those programs, what network connections, what websites he's visiting, and everything. So when James finishes his exam, he just double-clicks on the Envigilator watermark and clicks Finish. And all of that information has been sent up to the cloud, analyzed by our system, and then, most importantly, can be provided back to the instructor to help James, because Kyle goes and grades the exam. Maybe he would use CrowdMark or something like that. But when James gets his grade back, he realizes he didn't do very well. So he emails Kyle and says, "Hey, can I come into office hours?" Normally, what would happen, Kyle and James would sit down, and James would try to explain what happened, but he doesn't know. He's a freshman. He got lost, and so this is where Envigilator, the power of Envigilator, the insights that it provides really happen. So Kyle can log in to the instructor side of Envigilator. He can pick the exam that we were just doing. And when he does that, he can see James's recordings. And so he can get down to the point where that he can see what James was working on. He can see that he started up Visual Studio, that he started writing some code, that he was doing pretty well. But then he notices, "James, you never ran the debugger. Why'd you do that?" Maybe James didn't know. Maybe he missed that lecture. But none of that would have ever been turned in without Envigilator, right? The final source code is there, but all of that meta information that, because Kyle couldn't be there beside James in the classroom, was lost. But we allow instructors to get to that information quickly and effectively. So it's not just computer science. If we bring up another example here, I wrote a short little essay on Romeo and Juliet. So we can see, if we bring that up, that I fire up Word, I look up a few details on Wikipedia, I find the full text, and I reread some of the pieces online. But my English instructor can see that I didn't create an outline, I didn't have any of my major themes lined out, and I just kind of started brute force writing my essay. So she knows that she has to go back and work with me on the process that I'm working on in my essay writing. So we've really learned a lot in the short time that we've been working on Envigilator. Number one is that you should listen to your users. We started off as a cheating prevention tool. We were trying to stop students from cheating, and found out that our first users weren't catching many cheaters, but they started using it in the scenarios that I just described. And we're actually much more excited now to be able to help students instead of just stopping them from cheating. We also learned to talk to outsiders. So as I said, this comes from software development classes, where that's what we are. We're a bunch of software developers in the classes that we teach. But we've talked to folks in the humanities and, again, writing English papers and things like that. This could be used in a wide variety of areas, not just in higher education either, in the K-12 market as well. So what we're really looking for is we're running a cohort of instructors this fall. We would love any of you that are teachers, educators, that have your students do any kind of work on a computer. Please get in contact with us. We really want to test out the diversity of this. We'd also love to start talking to distribution companies that can help us get this out to the most students as quickly as possible. And we'd really love to start talking learning analytics, because just what Daphne talked about earlier, John mentioned earlier, the power of analytics, that as we get all this data and we're able to help students and intervene earlier because we can see things like, you're searching the web 20 times in the last 30 seconds and you're not finding your answers, and you're looking on Yahoo Answers to find good programming solutions. But students that get good grades in this class, they tend to look on Stack Overflow. Why don't you go look over there? Those are the kind of things that we can enable. So we'd love to talk with anyone doing research in that area. Thank you very much for letting me show you Envigilator.
So you skipped a few things. Is this client-side software that only runs on Windows, or can this run on an iPad, iPhone, Android phone?
Yeah,
Tell me.
so we're very early stage. All we have right now is a Windows client side, and for the full features, it does need to be client side. It can't be in a browser because we're detecting a lot of what the system is doing and how the student's interacting with it. But the plan is to go forth into any platform.
How early is the project? Just give them an idea.
Well, we've been working on it for about 18 months for the technology development. But we've only recently, this is where we're launching as a learning analytics tool. And so while the core technology is solid for gathering that information, we've had to pivot, restart around now. Users want different things now that they're doing different things with this.
Very early
you
stage
also didn't
company.
talk about
Unfunded?
Unfunded. We're bootstrapping this all ourselves.
You didn't talk about how much this is going to cost a school or a kid or a teacher or whatever.
Yeah, we're still figuring that out. We think we do have a freemium model, a grassroots, Yammer style. We want to get in. We think we can charge them something because we're saving the teachers time, but we know that's probably at best a break-even point. But then when we can go back to those school systems and say, there are 30 of your teachers in there, and we can give you analytics data, particularly, again, where we come from, the first market we're looking at is state-funded institutions that have student success metrics, right? They have to get students through increasingly in 4 years. It costs a university in Texas that we talk with $1,700 every time a student fails their intro chemistry class. And so we can be part of the solution of that because we can drive the instructors to help their students earlier in all the stuff that happens outside of a learning management system.
Go ahead, Michael.
So when you talk about learning analytics, it looks like you're doing some kind of a trapping at the event level in OS, and so there's a granularity question, I think, right, about how you actually build up and if you can do analytics at any kind of higher scale. Is that how you're mapping it out? Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yes, absolutely, and that's what we think the current tools, I mean, the learning analytics space is blowing up, and that's what we think most of the tools out there right now are at too high of a level, and we're bringing it down to a more granular level, and then we can, in aggregate, bring it up to the higher level, or we can feed in along with side.
So what would the analytics be like? This person was in their Visual Basic for 18 minutes of the exam, on Stack Overflow for 6 minutes of the exam, and reading TMZ for 2 minutes of the exam?
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to a student earlier at lunch from Waterloo. He's like, I do a lot of different things when I'm working on my assignments, and then we create that learner profile. It's not too dissimilar from the Cadaptive folks earlier, right? We're trying to create that profile of what successful learning is in each of these domain areas.
Well, yeah, it's a complicated subject because, again, the granularity question, right? So time on task, if you will, as a metric is one thing, right?
Yes.
But what you actually do there and what you actually learn there is, to me, it's a different domain. And what Daphne mentioned about having concept graphs and the like is somewhere in another sphere, right? It sort of sits outside of how many minutes in the browser, for example.
What did you think, Betsy? I see you're thinking about it.
Yeah. Can you, you mentioned that you tried this out on some people and then you pivoted. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about how many teachers, how many students have actually been beta testers in this?
Sure, yeah. As Jason said, very early stage. So we've had about 25 faculty use it. Over about 1,000 events. So again, homework assignments and things like that. So yeah, very, very early stage.
All in computer science?
Yes, or in related areas, yeah. Very, very closely related.
Who decides privacy? Who decides privacy settings? Like, if I fire off an email to mom, I don't necessarily need my teacher to see that.
Right.
So
exactly. So the student is always in control. Right now, they're in control in that they turn it on and turn it off. So there's kind of two usage scenarios. One is the forced usage kind of scenario, a lab. You come in, the final exam, and you will run it, and you'll run it while you're in there. And if you choose not to run it, you'll have to get out. But the bigger usage scenario that we like is students firing it up and using it when they're at home because it's the aid that they need. And we know we're going to need more granular controls of that. But again, the watermark's always there, so the student's always in control of that information.
It's a really different concept, Esther, of like instead of looking at the output, looking at the process that got you there. What do you think as a teacher?
I just wonder what students would think about being monitored to that degree.
Well, my instinct is I would have two computers, one where I do all the dirty work, and one where I get to show you what I'm doing, because I know if you're going to watch me and grade me on my process, I'm going to make sure the process is perfect, but I'm going to work on that on another computer, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, part of our goal as judges is to pick a winner and loser. This isn't yet ready for the marketplace. It needs to be cross-platform on all platforms, because if a teacher told me as a parent that I had to buy a Windows machine, I would say, fuck no.
Yeah.
Because he'd always say that. Anyway.
I do. I do. In fact, in kindergarten, I got in trouble for telling another student fuck, and the teacher went to my parents and made a big deal. And then I said, I apologize. I had to apologize to the whole class, and I said, I apologize for saying fuck to this kid. So I got to say it twice, compounding the effort, right? So teachers, be careful of how you ask kids to apologize for things, right?
No, thank you, Rob. You're right. This is why we're here, for exposure, to get feedback. We want that
fairness,
insight.
we're trying to pick a range.
In terms of another feedback, I mean, there is a bit of a leap, and I think this is what Michael was also alluding to. There's a bit of a leap between saying, if I can track where you have been, I know where your understanding failed, right? Yeah. And if your value proposition is you're going to really show increased learning outcomes because you can, kind of track things better, I think, candidly, you're going to have a much deeper, richer story about how that happens. It feels a little hand-wavy at this point. And also just encourage you to really super test with a whole lot more people.
Yeah, absolutely. We're located in the Purdue Research Park, and we're working with some learning analytics folks there, and in some other realms.
But you need to go into a school. I mean, you need to be in a school with real kids and real teachers, and see whether the amount of time that it would take to both learn this platform and so forth would actually so dramatically improve learning outcomes and help them understand what's going wrong, that it would be worth paying, because in many schools, their budgets are super small for any kind of outside software.
I think you're right. So if there's any educators that want to be part of that, we'll have us in your schools. Team at Envigilator.
It'd be really interesting, like with Linda this morning, if you watch somebody Photoshop, for 15 minutes to meet a certain end, if somebody could just charge you to rate your Photoshop ability and just give you pointers about how you're sucking and how you could be better, it's really interesting, I think. But I don't think you know exactly where this is going to get very powerful.
No, to be honest, that's the stage we're at. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
This gets to a philosophical place where this industry is going. I learn a lot more by being forced to stand in your position and have to teach somebody something. And that's the process. That's where I learned your process, your philosophy, the choices you made when you did your research to get up there. And I wonder if there's a different pivot that you might go toward because of that, that you can bring your learning better to a classroom and stand in front of a classroom and teach what you had learned.
It's conceptually very interesting, yeah. Awesome. Let's hear it for Envigilator.
Thank you.
Envigilator, sorry.